All right, so the last session of this block is empowering your students for success, exam success, and it's going to be delivered by Susan Liu. She is Head of Professional Development for Oxford University Press China, and she has over 15 years experience teaching primary, secondary, and adult learners, and over 10 years experience working in professional development, consultancy, developing PD plans, observing classes, and delivering sessions like these to teachers around the world. So, Susan, I'll go ahead and hand it over to you.
All right. Thank you, Josh. Good morning, afternoon, and evening to everyone, because we have such a wide range of people from all over the world. It's a great pleasure for me to be here today with you to share my experience on how we can empower our students for exam success. I'm not sure how many of you have already started, or how long have you started teaching exam prep classes. When I got the invitation to deliver this talk, it immediately brought me back to my memories when I first started teaching. I was an international English exam prep teacher. So I hope you will enjoy today's session. The last session for the day, right? Okay, so to help me understand your teaching context a little better, before we start, I would like you to help me with a quick poll question on what are the challenges you face or you think you might face if you haven't started doing this in exam preparation classes. All right, so we'll do this for 30 seconds. So there are 6 options to have a look at. All right. If you feel it's more convenient to type, it's okay. But we have A, covering exam content and formats more challenging for you, or B, equipping students with learning strategies, or providing constructive feedback, or D, making exam prep fun, or E, dealing with stress and anxiety, or something I didn't think of, right? Okay, let's do it for another 10 seconds and we can share the result. All right. Okay, I saw someone already started typing, providing feedback, okay, or D, making the whole process fun, right? I know, okay. Pretty much all of them. Yep, it can be challenging. All right. Okay, so could we load up the results to see, what's the proportion? So let's see. I see with your vote, the highest percentage of 26% of you chose equipping students with learning strategies. It can be really challenging because sometimes we only focus on the language itself. We do not really pay too much attention to the learning strategies, or students do not come to the classroom naturally with a lot of learning strategies, right? Okay. And another big portion would be 22%, making the whole process fun. I already saw all of these. And also covering exam content and formats. And also the other ones is dealing with stress and anxiety. Very good. Okay. Or you find great and exciting or interesting topics, right? Okay. Thank you very much for taking the poll. A, B, C, D, all these 4 actually, help boost students' confidence if we give them the tool, right? If we familiarize them with the content or formats, we help them with learning strategies, we give productive, constructive feedback, and we make the process fun, right? Also, we need to help our students with exercises or tasks that help them deal or handle anxiety. So today we're going to have a look at each of these, and I hope you will walk away with something really useful for you. All right. Okay. Thank you very much for the first activity. And so in this session, I'm going to cover three areas. Number one is learning strategies, which is, I was really glad to see a lot of you chose that option for effective exam preparation. And number two is practical tips you can walk away with to make the whole process or activities more engaging. And then we will take one step further, making the whole process more motivating and reflective. Right. Okay, so first, learning strategies. So there are so many different kinds of learning strategies, and according to Rebecca Oxford, we could broadly categorize different language learning strategies into direct strategies and indirect strategies. So we're going to have a look at a few of them that could be used in exam preparation. All right. Okay. So now let's think direct strategies. What are some example of direct strategies? For example, memory strategies are direct strategies, or cognitive strategies our students use in learning. They use directly to deal with new information, right? So cognitive strategies are direct strategies, and also compensation strategy, right? Compensation strategy is something students use maybe to get some meaning, to help them understand better, right? Okay, so what direct strategies we're going to look at right now? Number one is structured reviewing. Now we're going to start with another question, true or false question. So could you please read the statement about structured reviewing? If you think it's correct, please type T. If you think it's not correct or you do not agree with it, please type F for false, right? Okay, so reviewing should be spaced closer together at first, and then more widely spaced apart later. All right, we'll give it 10 seconds. Oh my God, great minds think alike. Everyone gave T. Right, very good. Okay. Nicely done. I think I do not need to explain more, right? So according to Ebbinghaus's forgetting curve, I think all the teachers will start learning with that, right? So we should plan reviewing more frequently after learning at first, and then gradually we space them or spread more widely. All right. So as teachers, we know the law of memorizing and forgetting, right? But our students might not be aware of this, or they just do not have the knowledge of how our brains work about in terms of memorizing and forgetting. So as teachers, we need to equip our students with some strategies they could use to enhance their learning and reviewing. So now we're going to have a quick look. I'll give you an example. For example, I just covered these expressions in my class, right? Can you find something in common among all of these expressions? Finally, firstly, furthermore, to begin with, moreover. So what are the functions of these expressions listed on the screen right now? Linkers, right? Thank you. To help you structure the speech, signal words, right? Exactly. Thank you very much. We call this signposting, like the picture I have, right? They are signposting language or expressions, so which help our readers understand what we're talking about, where we are going next, right? So it's very important to include or to practice or cover these in our lessons. But more importantly, we can cover all these in our classes, right? But students still need to schedule time to study and practice after the class, right? So here I have two students reviewing schedules. So on the left is student A's, right? So the green one, that's how student A scheduled his reviewing on how to use these signposting language. We can see 30 minutes right after the class, and then 20 minutes one day later, and then another 20 minutes 2 days later, right? And then on the right is the yellow chart is student B's schedule. So it's much shorter, right? Only 3 times of reviewing, and each time is much longer. So now let's do a quick poll. Which one do you think is more effective? A, the green one, or B, the yellow one? All right, we'll do it. It's very short, straightforward, right? We'll do it in 5 more seconds, with 5 more seconds. Okay, great. I've already seen green, 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 green. Okay, let's pull out the results for now. Even though a lot of you have, right. Okay, let's see, 82% of you chose the green one is more effective. So let's see why. All right. So on the left, we could see at the beginning, the students schedule the reviewing much, much closer, right? 30 minutes after the class, and then 1 day, 2 days, 5 days. So the retention rate of the memory about these, how to use these, or the meanings of these expressions will retain better, right? So the yellow one, it seems like shorter, right? You only need 3 times, and I can spend a lot of time each time, but it's less effective because it's spreads too far apart, right? Okay, very good. It includes regular revision. All right, so first one is structured reviewing. And then second one, for direct strategies, we need to familiarize our students with the test structure. So I pulled out a test overview of Oxford Test of English. We can see, in each module, speaking, listening, reading, writing, we need to let our students be very familiar with, how many parts in each module and how many items there will be, and also the structure of each part. So our students will be more prepared. They won't be so stressful when they take the test on the test day, right? Okay, yes, practice makes perfect. Exactly. So one thing importantly is that we need to, especially with timing, how much time each module or each part takes. From my teaching experience, my students had a big time problem of having the correct feeling of how much they can do within 15 minutes, how many sentences they can output within 40 seconds, for example. So it's important for us to give them enough practice to familiarize with these, right? Okay, so after familiarizing with the text structure, another thing is getting familiar with the task types and the sub skills. So for example, I took this listening module from Oxford Test of English. We can see there are at least three different types of tasks, right? So multiple choice tasks, note completion tasks, and then matching tasks, right? So students need to be familiar with the formats of these tasks. And also, if we see the testing focus, it's about the sub skills required in listening. So in our teaching, you might have to enlarge the table a little bit. Sorry if it's too small. For example, for listening, we need to practice how to identify 4 specific information or details? How do we listen for or tell the differences between explicit meanings and implied meanings? Okay, so but of course, practicing these soft skills do not have to happen all the time with mock tests or sample tests, right? It's just we could build these in our regular classes, but you have to factor in the test that you're preparing your students for, what it includes, what soft skills or task types it includes, right? Okay. Number 3 tip for me with direct strategies is to help your students do some exercise about the test taking strategies, right? Okay, so now I took an example about how we can help students deal with multiple choice questions, I think, which is very frequently seen task types, right? Now, could you please spend 1 minute and read through these steps of approaching multiple choice questions and put them into the correct order, right? Okay, so which one would be step 1 or step 2 or step 3? So A, read each question. B, decide which is the right answer. And C, study the relevant part of the text carefully. So which one, could you please put all these into the correct order when you approach multiple choice questions? So first step would be, yes, thank you. First step would be E, right? We should quickly read the whole text. And second step, A, and then we read each question, right? We read each question. And step 3, yes, step 3. Very good. Thank you. E and A. And number 3 would be C. We need to study the relevant part of the text carefully. And then number 4, I'll wait for 10 seconds. Number 4, so after we study the relevant part of the text more carefully, what should we do? Yes, F, we mark the parts of the text which relate to the answers. Very good, very good. I see a lot of good answers. And then after this, number 5, step 5, what should we do? I'll wait a little bit. Very good. Thank you, everyone. Reveal, Adina. Very nice. Thank you. Oh, it's going so fast. I can't read everyone's name. Sorry. So number 5 is G. Look at the alternative answers given. And then after this, number 6 would be, yes, B. Decide which is the right answer. And last part, of course, a lot of times we are not sure about the answers. We have to try to take out the impossible ones and guess. So here is a quick example of how we can help our students to be aware of test-taking strategies. And also, with multiple choice questions, you can also remind your students that a lot of times the answers have distractors, right? For example, answers that include words that look correct or true, but they are not stated in the text, right? So these are distractors. Or some distractors can include words from elsewhere in the text, not like the near the answer is, but not the answer, right? Okay, right. So we should spend a little time, so students will feel more confident taking different task types. Okay. Yes, I agree. Never do not usually leave question unanswered. You could mark the questions that you weren't sure about and then come back. But it's like it's not too wise to leave something there, think I'll remember or I'll come back later. Right. Number 4 would be familiarizing with the topics. I agree with a lot of you mentioned that, make covering the topics. There are so many topics, right? Especially in speaking and writing tasks with my old students. The challenge is they didn't have enough background knowledge about the topics, so they don't have ideas to work on, even though they probably have the language ability, but they do not have the ideas. So as an exam prep teacher, we need to help them familiarize with these topics. And I do have a lot of teachers ask me questions like, should we cover more like mainstream topics like education, environment, friendship, childhood memories, or we should focus more on like offbeat topics that students have no idea about? I think for me, I would suggest going for the so-called mainstream questions or topics first, because the answers might be transferable to similar topics, while offbeat, not like rare topics, are not so transferable. No matter what topics you cover, it is very useful to expose your students to a range of ready-made or shared ideas so they can work on these, right? So one thing I like to do is to make a class routine to get students to make a 3-minute presentation on the topic I have. I have a topic list that we will cover for these tests. Then they can choose an article about this topic, or they could choose a short video about this topic and present a short summary. After that, the whole class come together and have a discussion and take notes about this topic. So now we have more ideas, have more like thoughts about this topic, so we can talk about it, right? So a lot of times is that they do not have the idea. Right. Okay. So these were some direct strategies. Next part, we're going to cover some indirect strategies. So, for example, some metacognitive strategies. Strategies about learning. Right. They think about the learning process. They plan for their learning. They do self-evaluation. These are some indirect strategies that are very, very important. Also, indirect strategies include emotional strategies, how they handle different different situations with different emotions, and also social strategies. We find opportunities to communicate with others to make it more socialized, right? Okay. So here I'm going to share with you a couple of indirect strategies. First one, I think all the teachers agree that we should set goals for our learning, right? That's what I like to do at the beginning of the course or at the beginning of a semester, probably. So my only reminder or suggestion is to when we set these goals, we need to make them specific. It shouldn't be too general. For example, I want to improve my English this year. This is way too general. We do not have something to grasp, right? So it needs to be specific, right? For example, I want to improve my English from A1 to A2 this year. Something like this. And number 2, we want to make it measurable. It's like you have like measurable results and it's achievable. Sometimes, when I was students, I had a problem. I always have so many goals for a day or for this semester, which are not practical, not achievable. That hurt my motivation to carry on. So setting goals that are achievable and realistic, very, very important. Last but not least, set a time limit. It should be time bound. You need to give yourself a time, but realistic time, right? So after setting like a longer term goal, we also need to break them down into smaller steps, right? So what we can do on the top, we can have like probably 2 weeks learning intentions, like an objective. For example, in the next month, I want to describe an event effectively. On the tip of the pyramid, I have this as my goal, or my aim. And then in the green part, I would describe what success would look like. For example, if I want to describe an event effectively, I need to use the simple past tense correctly. And I need to use frequency adverbs correctly, right? So list what success would look like. And then at the bottom of the pyramid, in the blue part, we list the actions we need to take. But also, for example, practice the simple past tense, like every day. Read 2 stories every week. But also, I want to set a time limit. Aim to achieve this in a month, right? Okay, so this is also like we call it an objective pyramid to break the long-term goal into smaller steps. All right, so this is about one of the mega cognitive strategy about the planning, right? Next one, very important, about emotional strategies. I have to say, preparing for exams sometimes can be stressful, especially when we only focus on the scores day by day. It can be because you cannot improve scores like dramatically, like 10 points within 5 days, right? So it's important to help students focus on the small positive progress they make day by day. So I usually make it a classroom routine to ask them to keep a positive journal. So for example, record anything that's positive for the day after learning. For example, day 1, I can write down, I understood almost everything my teacher said today. So this is something students might not think about, for someone who struggled with teacher's instructions. If he understand almost everything that day, it was a great achievement, right? And then on day 2, you think about the learning experience again. For example, some students may say, I took a risk using a new expression today. Because using something new means you broke out of your comfort zone, right? So I'm glad I did it and I got the help from my teacher. This is something positive and this is a big step I took, right? Okay, day 3, they might say I completed the writing task on time. Hey, this is a great achievement, right? So sometimes students do not realize this. Well, they can write them in the journal book or just a post-it is enough, right? The learning, the thinking about it is more important. And next one, more about taking care of body and our mind. So what advice would you give your students when dealing dealing with or taking care of the body and the mind. So I listed like a couple of pictures, so you could guess what kind of advice I'm trying to give my students. So I give like 20 seconds to see if anyone would be able to guess what I'm trying to say here, what kind of taking care of the body and mind advice I would give my students. Have breakfast. Breakfast is a very important meal. Someone said yes. Number 2 is sleep well. Very good. Thank you. Yes. Now A is eating healthy food. Have a healthy diet. Right. Yes. Thank you. Number 3, the running guy is, do exercise. And anything number 4? Number 4 is listening to music. Thank you very much, which will help us relax a little bit. And number 5, I'm very curious what everyone would come up with: the umbrella and the beach bench or couch. Relax, right? Yes. So this one is, I would suggest students taking a study break a while after they really like a cramming for the exam, right? Taking a break is also important. Okay, last one with the lungs. What is that? Yeah, chill, right? Exactly. Right. Very good. The last one is using some breathing strategies or techniques to help you relax, right? Or to refresh your mind. So now we're going to, are you ready to do something together with me? So this is, I love this little simple exercise. I learned from Oxford International Curriculum on well-being. So now, can you please take out your hand and spread your palm with me? So we're going to do a little breathing exercise. So we take our index finger and start here on the outside of the small little finger. So when we move our finger up to the tip, we breathe in, and then we move down, we breathe out. And continue, breathe in. Are you breathing in? And now I'm at the top, going down, breathe out. So we do this up, down, breathe in, breathe out. Breathe in, breathe out. So this helps us to, just to quickly retool ourselves. Okay, is retool. It's very easy. It requires nothing, probably only 30 seconds or 1 minute, but it does the work, right? Okay. Next one, we talked about social strategies, right? So social strategies, we can see peer teaching is also, I'm not sure how many of you have tried peer teaching, because, peer teaching gives students like learner autonomy, right? And they would spend more, they will notice more about the language. So what I would do is give them like a small area to teach. They have to do their own research. It can be a word, an expression, an idiom, or a grammar rule, or something like commonly confused words, right? So I would ask students to prepare a small presentation and then teach their classmates on their findings. This helps students to think more about the learning. Right. Okay. So this is about the learning strategy part. Now I'm wondering, we will take 1 minute and think, what learner strategies did we cover, or what learner strategies you found the most useful or interesting? All right. Okay. Now it's sharing time. You are thinking about the learning and the presentation, right? Okay. So let's see. Yes, direct and indirect. And take deep breath strategies. Doing yoga is also very practical. Very good. Direct strategies. Very good. And Natalia said memory table. Very good. Peer teaching. Yes, basic foundation. Very good. Yes, to learn leadership. I totally agree. And next one, meditation exercise. Very good. Timing a review, right? Structured reviewing, right? Okay. A little more. Yeah, finger breathing. I really like this little exercise. SMART goals. Very good. Very good. Okay, thank you very much. Now we're going to move on the second part, some practical tips to make the whole process or like exam practice more engaging. So I get a lot of questions like, how can we make the process more engaging? My answer, always very straightforward and easy. Some activities in your regular ELT classroom still apply when you prepare your students with exams, right? So now we're going to look at a couple of activities in like listening, speaking, reading, and writing. Hopefully you will find some inspiration of how we can adapt our general ELT activities, like more related to exam prep. Whoopsie. All right, so first one, predict a word. Okay, so making prediction is a very important sub-skill in listening. So here is an activity I usually like to play with my students. So for example, we will choose a topic that might appear in the test. So I will select a speaker who can usually speak pretty fluently to be the speaker. So the speaker will prepare a 2-minute presentation or talk on the topic outside the classroom. Then what about the rest of the students? They will think about this topic. For example, living with friends. What will that student talk about? They predict 6 words that they think will definitely appear in the presentation the student will give. And then write down another 6 words they think they might appear, but I'm not so sure. And then they write down in the table. And after a couple of minutes, we invite the speaker back. Then the students listen to the presentation. What will we do? If they listen and find a word they have on their paper in the talk, they will tick, right? I got the word. So if each word on the I'm very sure about can get 1 point, and each word on words I'm less sure about can get 2 points. Then you can see how many points they can get. So it will be more motivating for them to focus on predicting. But of course, the speaker can be replaced by the audio file, right? So as you just need to give more background information. And next one, also listening, but this one I use it to practice listening for details. It's called the word rows. And so usually I would dictate words like for students to give, and I give them a picture of rows. I ask them to write down the words I say anywhere they want. So I say inspire, properly, trust, college, look up. They can write down wherever they want around the rows. And then I would ask them, look at these words. What do you think the topic is about? So they have to look at these words and think, oh, what we're going to listen to, right? And then I'm going to ask them to listen to the audio and then add detail to the word on the picture. So here we're going to do a quick example. So our task is going to listen to the audio. I'm going to play from Oxford Test of English and then find out, can you add details or information to the 2 words? One is dressed. The other one is college library. Okay, so now let's load up the audio and please listen carefully and see what information you can add to dressed and the college library. Ready? Set. Okay, let's go.
So, Thomas, we need to think about how we're going to do this project on what our town was like 50 years ago.
Yes, Pauline, and the deadline's not far off. So how about starting off by deciding which topics we should focus on? I'm interested in how people dressed.
Well, I'm interested in the kinds of entertainment they had. So, if you're happy with these topics, we need to tell the lecturer in case she wants something else.
Good idea. But for now, let's just make a start.
Okay. Why don't we go to the college library? It's quiet there, and we can look up the local history.
All right, I already saw some great answers. So about dressed, the guy wanted to find out how people dressed, right, 50 years ago. And about college library, what about college library? Yes, very good. The woman suggested going to the college library because it is quiet there. Very good. So now you added details to the words and you listened for details, for specific information. All right. Okay. Next, we're going to have a look about how to get everyone talking, because my challenge would be like, I used to teach a larger group or a larger class, so it's very difficult to give every student chance to answer every single question or to try out every single speaking task. So, but I want to get everyone talking, so I will use a pyramid discussion. So I would put students into pairs or put into pairs and groups. Why? Because students might be more forthcoming in like a little relative privacy in a pair or a small group. Yes, but also it increases the amount of time of speaking and talking in your class, right? It maximizes the opportunities to speak. So of course, you can't monitor every single conversation, which might not be a bad idea, right? But you can always spot check. So here is an example. We're going to talk about advantages and disadvantages of living with friends. So I would use a graphic organizer to help them record their ideas. So you can pick any kind of graphic organizers you are familiar with to help them record ideas. So this is what I use. So first, I would ask each student, now I want to see what are the three icons in the middle stands for. So the one person means they will first work individually. So every student work alone first to think about the advantages and disadvantages of living with friends. Right? I give them time, work solo, work individually, and then I put them into pairs. So they share their information. Yes, very good. Share the information in pairs, but I would make sure the pairs I make are mixed ability pairs so they could help each other. Okay, they could help each other. After the pair work, I would put two pairs together in a small group. So now they work in groups of 4. In groups of 4, they talk again and organize their ideas again. And then organize their ideas together. Then each group of 4 will compete which group has the most ideas. Then they get the most points. Right? Okay. So another tip or reminder I will give is I always make sure every student has to contribute, because a lot of times they say, oh, I'll just wait when my partner, starts talking to me. So I will make sure everyone has to contribute to the idea, right? Then whichever group, so work individually, put in pairs, and then put in groups of 4, and then each group competes with each other, right? Okay. Next one, sorry, we're going to have a look at, I think this is something I really want to stress. That's why I move it front, because in writing or speaking tests, it's important. My students struggled with like paying attention to the level of formality in their answers. So for example, in part 1 of the OTE writing test takers need to write an email either to a friend or someone they don't know well, or someone they don't know at all. So this requires different levels of formality, right? Register, like Akisha said. So I would give them some of the phrases and then the functions, like on the right, which phrase shows excitement, which phrase gives advice, and I ask them to categorize and then take notes. Yes. After that, I would play games with them, So I believe everyone is familiar with tic-tac-toe. If yes, can you please type yes, tic-tac-toe? Do you use tic-tac-toe in your classes? Yes, very good. Thank you. So how do I use this to help my students practice using different formality levels of the language? For example, I put, you can enlarge the screen if you can see, I give like giving advice formally, requesting information informally, all these categories on each square. And then I ask them to work in pairs to play tic-tac-toe. So for example, first student wants to take the middle square, which is always my strategy. So he needs to make a sentence or give an example how we can apologize formally. So if he makes the correct sentence, he could take the middle square, right? Then next students might, for example, like, please accept my apologies, right? Is apologizing formally. And then the next students in the pair, the other student in the pair might want to take the first square on top left. So she needs to give advice formally. For example, using have you considered, right? So we play the game to see who wins the game, right? By giving correct answers. Then you can always follow up after playing tic-tac-toe. We can follow up with turning the sentences you made to the opposite. For example, the first students who chose apologizing formally now have to think of an expression to apologize informally, like sorry for that, right? So then you can practice both ways, right? Okay, so this is one way for us to make students aware of the level of formality they need to use in the language. The next one is about very useful in writing, and sometimes about in speaking tests, is to take different perspectives. It's also something I use to help students to prepare themselves with ideas about topics. So, for example, so these are 6 types of tasks I will give students about a topic. For example, someone needs to describe what they see about this topic. Another student needs to compare what is this topic similar to and what is it different from. The third student will have to analyze the topic in more detail, like what is this topic made up of? What are its parts or elements. And some students have to think, how can I argue for it? And how can I argue against it? So if each student works on one perspective around one topic individually first, and then they come together to share different perspectives, this group of students will have so many ideas to work on when they start writing or talking about this topic. All right, so I hope you can try out. It takes a little time to get students used to it, but once they're used to it, they could give you really, really good output. Yes, for beginner students, you will need to rephrase these questions, right? Okay. Next one, the last two ideas I'm going to share about making it more fun is, first one is to avoid cliche. Why does, because in speaking and writing tests, it's important to show your range, your wide range of language skills, right? I would ask students to think about some cliche expressions we want to avoid. For example, very, very generic descriptive adjectives like good, nice, bad. I'm not saying they're not useful, but in order to aim for higher scores, you need to show your range of language, right, or vocabulary. So I will put students to brainstorm as a class, agree on 5 cliche expressions we want to avoid this month. And then I put them on the poster or on the wall. And every time I spot students avoid using this, I give them the points or rewards. So this is something we could help our students to be more aware of. And another activity about, how to avoid or to show your range, avoid using cliche expressions and show the range of your language skills is to improve the article. I call it to improve the article. I do it in a think, pair, share, like someone mentioned before, format again. So I usually find students have challenges of using descriptive language. So I find articles from newspaper or websites, magazines, or other sample essays even. So I would replace some expressions like fancy words, I call them, more experienced writers or authors will use with some basic language. So here, for example, you could see I replaced 6 words with good, because this is something I don't want my students to use all the time, but I give them an example. If I replace all these words with good, what it will look like. And now you have to work together and try to improve this article by changing these 6 good words. These 6 good words, right? So now let's just take a look. Which one would you replace? First, you can write the number. First, good, you will use what word to replace it? Right, thank you. Anyone? Fantastic, professional, investigative, very good, talented, skilled, award writing, very good, award-winning journalist, very good, I like that. Talented, very good. Okay, smart, awesome. Wow, you guys are amazing. I do not need to explain further. So this activity could be, used in many different types of language you want to practice with your students. Okay, my last section is about how to bring like assessment for learning in the whole process, because assessment for learning, like we said, helps us give more constructive feedback, makes students think more and reflect on their learning more. So here are some, I will share some tips about what we can do before exam practice activities to engage them with assessment for learning, and what we can do after exam practice activities. So before, first tip is to discuss the learning intentions with them. For example, in this lesson, we want to focus on a particular test strategy, or in this lesson, we want to avoid some common mistakes. So we communicate our lesson goals or learning intentions with them, or they can think about each individual students have their own learning intentions, right? Another thing we can do is to discuss the support available. So, for example, you also might want to negotiate how much additional support you can give, because as a teacher, you are very busy, right? So, how much additional time the students might need, or how much you could give. Do they need more group work or collaboration? Right? Do they need more sample tests, or do they need more examples of a text? Right? Okay. And then another thing you can do is to do model and lead with examples. For example, you do part of the sample test with your students and give them model through taking the test with them, to let them know how you best approach the tests, right? Okay, and then also you want to clarify some key skills needed in this type of task, or the objectives of this, right? Okay, so this is what we can do before you actually give them the test activities. But what we can do after that is to make them, like I mentioned, reflect on the process. So first, self-assessment idea is to reflect on particular tasks, right? So you can give them a checklist, and then they self-assess the work and the task achievement. So for example, here I listed, they have to think in their writing task, practice task, have they included all the prompts in the answer? Have they involved the reader in their writing? Have they used different types of sentences, right? This is the range and variety of language they use. Or have they written the title? So provide a checklist on task achievement for them to reflect, right? Okay. This is on task achievement, but also it's important for them to reflect the learning process, right? So I really love using, I call it a 3, 2, 1 exit ticket. After the class, after the lesson, you exit with 3 tickets. So first ticket, I give, print out tickets, ask them to write down 3 things they did really well in the lesson or in the practice. And second ticket, they need to write down 2 things they would do differently. So now they really think about the learning process, right? At the last ticket, write down 1 question they want to ask, or they still have, or they want to learn more about, right? So 3, 2, 1 exit ticket. Very easy, takes nothing to prepare, but it really gives your students opportunities to think about their learning, right? Yes, like takeaways. All right. For example, I could ask you to write down 3 things you find interesting in this session to end our session. Okay, so these are all from me for today, and thank you very, very much for your participation. You are the best group. You are so motivated to learn. I know some of you woke up very early in the morning or stay up late, and thank you very much for being such a great cohort. And now we still have 2 more minutes. I I would be able to take a couple of questions if you have, or if you would like to share any insights, please do. We still have 2 minutes, right?
Hello, Susan. This is Josh, the moderator. So if you look at the Q&A tab, the one that says priority, we've curated some questions there. So you can have a look through there if there's any you would like to answer.
All right, let's see. All right. Okay. So I did see someone ask, what if some students will keep silent in groups, waiting for others to answer? I totally understand, because this happens all the time. I mean, not all the time, but very often. So first of all, I would think about why do the students stay silent or quiet? Do they need extra support? Do they struggle with the instructions, or do they struggle with the level of their language, or are they just not motivated at all, like they do not care about the topic? So if I know the reasons why they are silent, we could help them with more specific support. But sometimes we can also think about the grouping, what kind of groups we put them in. For example, with the pyramid discussion, I will always make sure everyone has to write down or to give one contribution. That's the task requirement. So sometimes it comes from the students, if they're motivated, if they have problems or challenges, and sometimes you can guide them through your instructions. Right, I hope that helps a little bit. Okay, what's the balance? I have a great question on what's the balance between direct and indirect strategies. I think that really depends on your group of students, because you know your students best, and each student is different. So you need to monitor which they need more. To help them best to prepare. I know it sounds a little bit generic, but that's really why we say including assessment for learning is important, because really it's about your learners, their needs, and what kind of support you could give. And I wish I would have more time to answer all these great questions, but I think later on we could come back if we have opportunities and the space to watch out for these questions. Thank you, Josh.
All right, thank you so much, Susan. Yeah, lots and lots of questions. We couldn't get to them all, so sorry, teachers, for that. But thank you so much for a very engaging and interesting session.